Thanks for joining me on this how to get started with the Flow AI Gateway video. Before I do anything with Flow, I'm going to start by pulling one of my favorite AI agents here onto this server, and I'm going to use Claude for this. Claude is from the company Anthropic. They're who wrote the MCP specification and standard. And one of the unique things about Claude is that it's good at math. So let's search for Claude desktop Windows install. There we go. So if you don't already have Claude, you'll just come here and download Claude. It's pretty self-explanatory. You'll need to create an account. You'll see that I'm using an account where I've decided to pay for higher performance. You don't have to in order to do this as a proof of concept. In addition to Claude, you're also going to want to make sure you have Node.js. You can go to nodejs.org, get Node.js, and then I use the Windows installer because I'm running on my Windows machine. All right, with that out of the way and installed, I assume that you've already installed Claude and you're already configured. Let's give Claude a launch. And you'll see that Claude will tell us that, hey, I've not been configured yet for any MCP servers. Now, because this is my account, Claude has a history of me using this service on other machines, and so it already knows about the idea of a flow or a time-based MCP server. That's where you're seeing that bit of an artifact. But currently there's nothing set up, so let me show you how to do that. You'll come up to the triple hamburger, we'll go to File Settings, and we'll find the Developer section. Let's edit that configuration, and it's going to show us what file needs to be opened inside of our installation directory. So it's just a little bit of JSON. It's ready for me to put in the configuration for my MCP server. The only thing that's unique to Flow in this configuration is the name and then the path. So I'm going to copy this, and you'll find this same thing in our documentation. Just check my squirrely brackets are all lined up. As I mentioned earlier, you need to have Node.js available for the npx command to work, and you'll need to configure this endpoint. So the easiest way to verify that this is the correct endpoint is to look over on your Flow install, look under the Flow server, and check your properties. The AI gateway is already there and ready to go. All we need to know is the configuration port and the server name. Server name is always here in the bottom right hand corner, in my case FLSNO2, and the port in this case is 8082. We'll make that change, save, and then in order for that change to get loaded into Claude, I have to go to File, Exit, and relaunch. Now currently, my Flow project is completely empty. There's nothing in my model, no data sources connected, but I can still verify that I have connectivity by going back into Settings, back into Developer, and there I'll see my Flow AI Gateway, and I'm running. So if I start a new chat, I can now either create a new chat and verify, or here I'll pull up the old one. And there we go. So we're connected. Now let's build out something in Flow, and we'll start to see what Claude is able to do with just the smallest bit of a model. I'm going to build just an enterprise and a site. Sit in Austin. And here in the site, I'm going to have an area called packaging. Let's do a line. And then how about a batch event for this line? So this will be my filler 1 batch run. And we'll keep it really simple. So let's open up a new data source, right click. I'm going to go to additional and run the Flow data simulator. This will be Acme Austin. Flow will automatically launch that data simulator, and in the background it's going to deploy it, make it available, and it'll take usually 3 to 5 minutes. It'll start to backfill the history once I start interacting with the tags on this server. You can always check the status of this by looking over on the deployment tab, coming over your data sources, and you'll see here with the tooltip saying, hey, it's not currently running. It's just going through its process of getting itself set up. So I'll let that, oh, there it's done. See, if you talk about it, it always takes care of itself. So now I can browse this namespace. I can look down into the namespace, find my filler 1, and here's a state tag. State tag represents the machine state. And if we take a look at this data, if you're familiar with the Juice Factory demo, you've seen this before. Again, it's going to take a couple minutes to load, but this is simply a PLC tag. It's an integer value that moves from an idle state of 0 to a setup state, which is represented by the integer of 10. And then it moves into runtime, state of 20, before going to CIP, state of 30. That's my batch process. Setup, runtime, CIP, back to idle. During the runtime, we have a few little trips of downtime, but for right now, my batch run has a really simple definition. When the machine state is equal to 10, that's the start of my batch. After CIP, state of 30, it resets to idle, which is a state of 0. So that's the end of my batch process. I'm going to add a little bit of a description. This is the batch run for filler 1. And then if we want an attribute, we might want to know something like what was the product SKU we ran. I can go ahead and add that. I'll look it up and bring it in. And I'll bring it in from the product tag. So now what happens is when we run a batch, Flow's engine will do a lookup to whatever data I associate with this attribute to retrieve what was the product SKU at the time of that batch. Again, I have this as a PLC tag. I could be pulling this from an MES system. Maybe I could ask for it to be manually entered by an operator, but it's nice and easy for me because it's already at the PLC. So I'm going to backfill all of this back to the 1st of July. It's already set to do so, and off we go. And what will happen is we will get the Flow data engine to go back 3 weeks, pull all of the machine state changes, look for each of the start rules when the machine moves to a setup or an integer value of 10, and then it'll end the event when it resets back to idle state. It'll record each of those events into Flow's database, and it will do a lookup against the product SKU tag here to see what product we were making during that event. So it's recorded each event. There's the event visually represented, and here is our product SKUs, 3, 2, 4, 1, 2, and so on. Now I'd like to not have just an integer value here, so I'll use our toolbox and we'll create an enumeration. This will give me the ability to do a ordinal pairing for product name. So we have 4 different products that we potentially make. So let's go ahead and create 4 different ordinal pairs. And here we make orange juice, we make fruit punch. How about an apple, berry, cherry, and grape soda. All right. With that, I just need to come in and link that enumeration for that product name. I'm going to go ahead and backfill this because I'd like to go back to having the enumeration lookup rather than have those attribute values. And there we go. So now I am able to see exactly what product we were making as it related to the SKU for each of those batches. Okay, now all of this is now stored in Flow's database, which means Claude should have access to it. So let's give Claude a prompt and see what we can find out here. So at this point, Claude is using the AI gateway to pull the correct tools. There's over 18 different tools that we give an AI agent access to, as well as all of the instructions and context on how to use those tools, in what order to use those tools, so that as I am giving my AI agent prompts, it is using the Flow AI gateway to not just know where to go look for the data, but how to actually work with the data that it finds. You can see Claude has come back quite quickly and said, hey, here you go. So my batch run overviews for filler 1. Currently, we are in an active batch. We're in period ID 222. This is a sequential batch ID that is grows with each batch. We are on product apple, berry, cherry, started July 22nd, 2025, 3 hours and still running. And then here's my last 10 runs. And it's great. And then, like most AI agents, Claude gives me observations and then recommended next steps. So gave me a range of the batch durations, suggests a lot of variation. Product mixes, it has seen 4 different types, has a concern over orange juice. It ran 40% longer than average, worth investigating. And in my current batch, apple, berry, cherry, it's a new different product variant, monitor for completion time. That's interesting. So this is the first time out of this group of 10 that Claude has seen that we've made apple, berry, cherry, so it's making a recommendation for us. Okay, that's great. Now, what if I want to do some more? Claude happens to be pretty good at math because it has an emphasis on being able to create code and write scripts. So I might ask something like this. And then again, Claude will go, use the right tools, look backwards to the beginning of July, pull all of the events, and do the analysis for me. You'll see different performance markers along the way as you're using different agents. Some agents will be faster than others. Based on the plan that you're on, you'll have different resources available for your agents. I want you to understand, though, that like right now, it's not the Flow AI gateway that is slowing Claude down. It's Claude's ability to actually process and hold this information as it's pulling it. So if I asked Flow's API for if I queried it for a list of all of the events during July, that would be an instantaneous result. So when we're seeing these types of delays, it's just the agent itself working with the data. So Typically, the higher the paid plan, the faster the result, but I've also noticed that sometimes it just depends on the amount of traffic at the time. About 2 hours ago, Claude was in a very high traffic part of its day, and it was really slow in response. Okay, so there's our July analysis. Came back with, again, the range, the duration variability, 5.25 hours, or 5.15 hours, I should say, between the shortest and the longest. Critical findings, and then it gave me the average duration, and it chose to do that per product. I could have specified otherwise. Maybe I would if I wanted to keep going down this line of thought. But what if we add a little bit more information into Flow? What else could we do? So we've got the batch processes. Let's take a look at the data. For this filler, I also have a product supply totalizer, my energy usage, water supply totalizer, a good and a reject count. So I'm going to create a little metric here. And let's bring over each of these. Concentrate supply, my energy usage, my water supply, my scrap, and my good production. Some of the context came with the tags. The units of measure traveled with it from my historian. If I look at each one, I can see that I've picked up a standardized format, my unit of measure, and a description as it sat in the historian. So that's useful. The description already has information that it's a totalizer. There's where the tag came from, and there's the patterning of the data for 30 minutes. I'd like to know, specific to my batch runs, how I am doing in my good and my scrap. So let's do that. Let's do a hourly total, good production, hourly. Let's do the same thing here. Now for good production, I'm going to change the description just a little bit. Filler 1, good bottle count per hour. Let's reduce the format. I don't need decimals. I will work with integers. And context is the calendar that it's based on. So this is using my production calendar in the toolbox to give the beginning and end of what an hour is. It will also follow the rules for that when I turn this into a day. Our plant day starts at 6 a.m. according to that calendar, or if I turn it into a shift. We run 3 shifts a day, starting at 6 a.m., then 2 p.m., and then 10 p.m. But I'm going to bring in my event as well, because I want every time that we change the product SKU, I'm going to ask Flow's data engine to also take the production count and sum it based on the start and end period of that product run. Now, I will certainly run more than 1 hour in a batch run, so I need to also tell the engine that when we have more than 1 hour period inside of a batch, what do you do with those multiple slices of data? We'll sum them. By default, sum is almost what's always chosen. Okay, and then on the retrieval side, that's a totalizer, so I would want to take a counter aggregation of that data. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy this one. It'll backfill again to the 1st of July. Take just a couple minutes for it to finish its backfill, and then we'll have some data stored in Flow's database alongside with each of those batch run events. We'll also then start to total all of the production inside of each batch. And we're done. So for each hour, there's a 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock hour. There's a total. And then for that hour, we've also created an entry of what was the product SKU. And we see we've associated that total with the product SKU. So I have 3 hours currently associated with apple, berry, cherry. And if I look backwards, there's all of the fruit punches. So a little bit of context. And then I'm going to do the same thing with that. And I'm going to say, take that hour, create a shift to date, create a day to date, a week to date, and let's go ahead and do a month to date. So this will inherit the same context as what was on the hour. It'll sum the hourly slices into a monthly totalizer and then reset at the end of that period. We'll backfill them all and deploy. We'll do the same thing with just a daily total. And the daily total will sum all of the 24-hour periods into a daily. Notice that my event context travels with it. All right, I'm going to reorganize my model just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead now and create a separate metric. I'm doing this for my own organization, but the benefit is that the AI agent will also use this structure. So if you think about it from a logical standpoint, the agent will see that everything under this metric has to do with process variables. It's kind of the raw data. And then everything here are metrics of production. So I have good hourly production. I have scrap hourly production. Let's go ahead and finish our scrap the same way that we did our good. And now we've deployed. Backfill has started with the engine going and grabbing all of the raw data back to July 1st from the historian for that tag, adding the context, storing the results. So with that finished now, I've got some more information that Claude has access to. All right, now use the Flow AI gateway, interact with my model, pull the appropriate data, and bring it back to me in a table. So the development team at Flow has really worked hard to make sure that when you're using this product, that your AI agents really understand how to interact with our models. What tools should be called for what type of prompt. We've also included some troubleshooting and error results so that the agent, if it encounters an error, has instructions on how to overcome that error and what they should try next. So I think you'll find that as you're using this, you're really not having to worry too much about troubleshooting with errors. So I'm getting some feedback from Claude that it is seeing some really high numbers, that tells me that it's probably interacting with that totalizer tag. So I'm curious to see if it's able to overcome this or not. Okay, so it's not. Notice that it's giving me billions and millions for production and scrap. So that's definitely not accurate. This is where I'm going to let it know that it used the wrong data. Give it a little pointer and see if it can't course correct. There we go. So you can see respond, let me use the proper metrics that are already sliced by batch events. And because I'm used to seeing it pull these tools, I can see that now it's using a get measure event data, which is going to put it on the right path. And there we go. I can see in the numbers, the production and the scrap are in line with what I would expect. So let's see how the table comes back, and then we'll do one more exercise as part of this how to get started. Nice little bonus, it included a scrap rate and an hourly rate for me across the batch. Not something I asked for, but this is where that knowledge that the AI agents have really is helpful, because it's already now giving me more information than I asked for that is more useful than what I would have thought to have asked for the first time. Again, showing me some performance analysis, some critical findings. That's great. So because now we've had some success, I might want to give it a little bit of feedback. And I'll go ahead and let it know, hey, that's exactly what I wanted. And unless I ask for raw data, let's not go there. So, if you think about it, it's important that I understand how we model data as an organization. This isn't doing my job for me, but it's making it easier for me to get into the data, work with the data, see the data, and giving me some really helpful additional insights. So let's look back at our model, kind of our last use case here. I also had in my process variables, I have my energy usage. Let's do a daily. Now that is in kilowatt hours, so it's a totalizer. So we'll do a counter. Again, I'm going to bring the batch information in. And I'm going to also do some machine state information. So I'm going to use machine state, and I'd like to know per day how much time we have been in setup total. So instead of doing a typical aggregation, I'm going to do a time in state. And when I'm in state 10, I'm in setup. That's going to return in milliseconds. Let's go ahead and scale that to minutes. Then Claude doesn't have to handle that math. The Flow engine will already have it done for me. But I'm going to bring in again the SKU. Now, if we ran the same SKU across a day, I'm going to want it to, I have a choice. Would I want it to average or sum? In this case, I'm going to want it to sum because I'm working on a total. Now, if I was trying to do average setup time for the day, then I'd have to be careful and change that. Okay, everything looks right. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing for my downtime. So let's do another one of these. This will be, actually, no, let's not do downtime. That's a whole nother use case. Let's do CIP. And I'll show you how I would do downtime here, just as an extra little bonus. All right, CIP was state 30. I'm converting this. And I said that was in minutes for their one state total time in CIP per day. I'm going to add the same thing on my title here. Now, this type of naming convention is really wise because I'm likely going to also publish this data to other systems. So I'm not just making it easy for myself or an AI agent to understand the data. I'm also really helping standardize the way we refer to information, but I'm making sure that downstream, other BI tools, my data lake, other individuals that are working with the data, they're going to have no guesswork around what this point represents. So take the time up front, add context, add descriptions, nail your naming convention. You'll be glad you did. All right, so that's now been updated. And then I said, hey, we'll do downtime as well. So I'm going to use the calculation rule for downtime trigger. My downtime states are when I'm at an integer value of 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, anything up to 30. 30 is CIP. So if we take a look, let's go back a day. Those little triggers are all downtime events. So I'm going to write just the tiniest little bit of scripting here. So when the value is greater than or equal to 21 and the value is less than 30, then in that case, I want you to write an integer value of 1, otherwise write a 0. Have to validate the expression, and then you're going to see every downtime now it's just going to show as a 1. All of the rest of the steps will show as a 0. There we go. So now I have a really nice and easy trigger to use for this rule. Daily downtime. Again, we're going to add our context. Context really is king. And time in state. Scaling factor 1667. And it's when it's in that state of 1 because of my trigger rules. So with that, I now have so much more for Claude to do. So now you've watched me kind of go through building this model. I didn't go crazy with it, right? I could have done, I guess, a couple of other things. Maybe, oh, I've got energy. Why not? Let's just do water supply real quick. Total daily. And I'm just adding these extra on here because I really want to see what Claude's going to do with all of this new information. Total daily. Hectoliters is already there. And then concentrate supply was the other thing. Now, if you're used to using Flow, if it's something that a tool you've worked with for quite a while, then you would know that I could be doing this a little faster if I used our templates feature. It would save me from having to keep kind of setting up the same thing over and over, but it's right in that point of the demo where I'm trying to make it as simple for you to follow along. And because I know I'm only doing this for this one little area, I'm not going to fool with the templates. Okay, so counter's done. We've got our water or our concentrate product supply or concentrate total use per day. All right, there we go. Okay, So now everything's been backfilled. I'm going to clean it up just a little bit more because I've started to let some of this kind of get unorganized. I'll move my actual metrics down. And then my time and states. This doesn't break anything in Flow because Flow doesn't use the namespace to reference one measure to the other or the relationships between tags and measures and calculations. Instead, Flow always uses unique IDs. So every folder, every event, every tag, every metric has its own unique ID, and that's how we follow the dependencies of each of the retrieved measures or the calculated measures, parent-child relationships, or through those IDs. And by the way, because we do that, that means Claude can understand that also. Let's tell him to take a look again. So one of my favorite things about Claude is that it's not just a matter of interacting with data in the form of tables and text, but Claude has the capability to also build some really neat little React dashboards. I want to position this by saying we don't think that this is the way that you should be doing all of your visualization. But imagine a scenario where you're getting called into a meeting, you have 5 minutes, and you want to get something to put up on a dashboard or something to print out and share with the group. This is a great way to do that. I don't have to make a request through a ticket for someone on the SCADA team to necessarily build me a dashboard and wait to do a feedback process with them on, is that what I wanted, or can I see it this way? This is actually a great way just to build some dashboards very quickly, see what you like, see what you don't like, and then maybe use that to guide that ticketing request. Anytime we can self-serve, it's just an absolute great way to go. Uh-oh. Looks like we lost Claude for a second. We'll give him, see if we can recover. Hopefully that's not on my side. It'd be a terrible time in a demo for me to lose internet connectivity here at the home office. Try it again. All right, so maybe just a little bit of a hiccup on Claude's side. I believe this desktop client is in beta mode. I know it's brand new from Anthropic, so you will likely see some problems. I know I have along the way. But I'm really thinking of this as more of an engineering tool or a management tool than something that you're running your plan off of at this stage in the game because of the lack of maturity, frankly, of most of these agents. But it is giving me a really, I like to think of it as a big searchlight or a flashlight that's helping me quickly find where I should maybe be digging in and paying more attention. And again, time to value, this total video I'm guessing is going to be less than 30 minutes. And we've installed and configured an MCP server using the Flow AI gateway. We have built out a production model for this filler, and we've kind of done a little bit of a art of the possible here, all in a teaching mode, mind you, in the time that, you know, I could take a lunch break. So I think a really powerful example of why right now is so exciting, but also why it's so important that we start to realize how to use these tools. This is a time where if we get our people thinking about how they can use these types of tools to make themselves more efficient, we'll be ready for the next wave of technology. And at the end of the day, in order to make this possible, again, what am I really doing? I'm adding context in my data modeling. I'm adding context when I'm talking about information and how I process it. Even if we never use the AI tool, the very act of spending more time in a data model in order to be prepared for that AI tool, well, that's going to give us a better result in everything else that touches that system. And how about that for a dashboard? There's my daily operations dashboard for yesterday, July the 21st. Total production for the day. Scrap rate for the day. It went ahead and calculated OEE. Remember my prompt over here on the left-hand upper corner. I didn't tell it what KPIs to give me. I told the agent what my role was and what type of meeting we are having. There's my downtime. My energy efficiency, kilowatts per bottle. Setup plus CIP time. So 248 minutes considered non-productive time. Yesterday's production timeline, the 3 batches that we ran. Interesting. So the batch 220, it's marked as currently running and has done estimates based on production because it's changed. Over midnight, continuing into July 22nd. It's been careful on its date of representation. And then our operational efficiency analysis. Resource consumption, time utilization, quality performance. Quality here, it's using the scrap. So we don't have any type of a LIMS or any type of a QA system hooked up, just as a reminder. And then critical items. I love this. What should we possibly be talking about in this stand-up meeting? Would you have known that orange juice used 3.4 times more energy than fruit punch? Not in 5 minutes, you wouldn't have. So there you go. I hope this was helpful for you. We would love to hear from you if you have some ideas about ways that we could make this Flow AI gateway even more powerful. And if you do need help along the way, we're happy to help you. Shoot us an email, support@flow-software.com. Thanks.